Hello, and welcome to Fresh Blood, a podcast about killing it in the age of ageism, where we prove that new blood does not necessarily equal young blood. Here to discuss what it takes to have continued success through life, I'll be your host, Jolie Downs. With over 20 years of executive recruiting experience, I've learned how much we can grow and be inspired by other people's stories. I'm excited to share that with you here on Fresh Blood. Today, we are talking with James Goi Jr., aka the Attract Money Guru and best-selling author of How to Attract Money Using Mind Power. James spent the first half of his life working a variety of low-paying jobs that anyone can get. He struggled with large credit card debt, feeling that he had no skills and no prospects before he started learning about and applying mind power techniques to his life. These mind power teachings were powerful, and once James decided to go full in on embodying the life he desired, everything transformed. James launched his first self-help book in his late 40s. He has now authored 11 books. He is part of the docudrama Think and Grow Rich, The Legacy, and he is living the life of his dreams. Thank you for joining us, James. I really appreciate your time. I'm so looking forward to hearing more about your story. Could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Well, certainly. It all started back in the state of New Jersey, where I'm from. And so I grew up there and came out to California when I was 19 years old. And pretty much, was just doing whatever, trying to make a living, not doing a very good job of it. And within the first few years, I started finding my first books on mind power and spirituality, law of attraction, and those type things. After a while, I ended up teaching that type of thing around the county here, metaphysical stores, things like that, and over in Sedona, Arizona for a while. And one thing led to another, and then, here I am all these years later, and 11 books later with a couple more coming out soon, and just never looked back. But it took, I lived a whole life in between there, even though I was learning and using the things I was, learning, I was using them and whatnot, but I didn't actually hit my stride and get into actually becoming an author and all of that until quite late in life.
Really? So how did that come to be, becoming this self-help author later in life? Tell me a little bit more about the road that got you there, because it sounds like you started doing some coaching. You glossed over it. Give us a little juice about what was going on there.
Right. Not really coaching so much, just like lectures and things like that to groups. But over the years, I had the desire to write, and I even wrote couple of little booklets that I, just kind of had stapled at the print place, and handed out at my lectures or whatever. But it was coming up on the year 2000 when I had the idea for what became my first book, How to Attract Money Using Mind Power. And so I wrote down, my working title and my first few ideas or whatever. Come to find out, I lived my life in between. I moved between states and everything else. And I didn't know how to use a computer. I didn't know how to type. I had just this huge learning curve. I read hundreds of books while I was writing that book. I collected up hundreds of quotes and used 160 of them in that book.
I love this. Did you teach yourself?
Yeah, I basically taught myself. Well, one of the best ways I think to learn to write is to read, and to read the kind of material that you want to write. So, of course, if you want to be, most romance novelists have been avid romance novel writers readers for years, right? And then they finally say, hey, I think I can do this. I've read so much in the self-help genre, spirituality, metaphysics, and all of that. And so it was just a natural thing. I loved writing, and I loved my subject matter. And so the two came together eventually.
So it wasn't that someone came and gave you a book deal. This was something that was inside of you that wanted to come out. You decided you wanted to do this, and you taught yourself how to do it. Is that correct?
Exactly. I mean, literally from the ground up. Like I had this I didn't know how to use a computer. I had this old Brother word processor with this little 16 line screen on it, it's a typewriter with a screen kind of a thing. And I got a book from the library to teach myself how to type, and just because I was a technophobe, I mean, I just didn't like technology, was intimidated by it, and so I had to. And then a year before I actually published a book, I knew that I still didn't know how I would publish it or whatever, but I knew I was going to have to be on the internet, and so I finally got a computer. And that was a nightmare. I mean, I basically taught myself that. And I had a friend over one day, and we were looking at some stuff online, and I started typing all this stuff into a notepad. And he said, "Well, why are you typing all that?" I said, "Well, I want to I want this. I want to print it out." He said, "Well, why don't you just copy and paste?" And this is a year. I've been using the computer for a whole year. And I said, "Copy and paste? What's that?" And he showed me, and I said, "Oh my God, you have no idea how many endless hours I have spent for a year typing everything I wanted when all I had to do was copy and paste. Who knew?"
James, I so love this though. I really, really do. Because if you can just set out and decide, you know what, I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to teach myself how to do it. And then you go out and do it and you make it successful. I think it's brilliant. I absolutely love this. And you did this later in life. You said this was in your late 40s?
Right. Well, and let me back up in one little bit. When I say I taught myself, I also read a lot of books on writing and grammar and editing, proof, that kind of thing. So I also read a lot on that. But yeah, I was late 30s when I started my first book, and I was in my late 40s when I finally published that book. It was like 9 years from start to finish. Because like I said, I had a whole life to live in between, and moving from state to state and all of that, life challenges and things. So yeah, it was a very, very long journey. Now, since then, my first book took me, and all of my books are small. All of my books can be read in a really a sitting or two, even, but certainly a day or two. They're easy reads. My first book took me 9 years from start to publishing it. And I've since written books in 4 days, 6 days. I even wrote one book recently. I sat down for I don't know how many hours straight from early morning till into the night, and wrote a book in one day. So from 9 years to one day, I think I've done pretty good on the getting the timeline down.
Yeah, you figured out your creative process. That's wonderful. Well, what do you feel has been the path to your success throughout these years?
Well, mostly it was, I think, living and breathing the subject matter that I would eventually come to be writing about and teaching. Like I say, very early in life, early 20s, I started finding this information and applying it to my own life in miraculous ways sometimes, and it's just living and breathing it until it became such a part of my mental process and my life, just everything about me, how I talked, how I acted, the way I thought, my emotional, content of my life. It was just really living and breathing it, and then developing the vision and the dream for what I wanted to do. And then, even though I had no idea how I would do it, and I had none of the tools, all I had going for me was the basic understanding, my developing understanding of the subject matter that I wanted to condense and put more simply and share with others. But that's all I had. Everything else I had to learn and struggle through.
Did you ever question yourself through those 9 years while you were developing it? And if you did, what did you do about that?
I never questioned myself really in that way during that time, because to me, once I had the idea for the book, I knew that this book absolutely has to be written. I'm going to write it. I don't care how long it takes, obviously, right? 9 years. And I didn't know what I was, promising or committing to when I thought to myself, I don't care how long it takes. But I knew that I had to write the book. It wasn't about the money. I didn't know anything about publishing, or even if I could get it published. All I knew for sure was that I had to write it. And so my life had all these ups and downs and challenges, and I'd be off of it for months and months at a time, and then I'd get back in, I'd pull it back out, dust off the manuscript, and start in on it again and start researching again, and just I knew that if it was the last thing I ever did, I was going to write that book. And so yeah, I never really doubted that I would. The only thing that could stop me from doing it was like I died or something. Otherwise, it was going to be written.
Mm-hmm. It makes me think the guest I had last week, he talked about being firm in your why. And if you're firm in your why, you can get through anything to reach your goal. And it sounds like you were really firm in your why. And that's what kept you going throughout to get your message across. Yeah. Well, would you say it is, because it sounds like you've written a number of books, you've written some took you a little bit longer, some very quick, but throughout your life, what would you say has been your greatest success, and what did you learn from it?
Right. Well, my greatest success is the fact that I am sitting here right now, absolutely 100% living the life of my dreams, and knowing that this is exactly not only where I wanted to be, but where the universe wanted me to be. And the universe stepped in so many ways to pave the way to synchronicities and miracles and everything else. So my greatest success, I think, was to have the vision of what I wanted, how I wanted to live my life, and what I wanted that to be, and what I wanted to be, and then not knowing anything about how that was going to happen, just moving in that direction until it did happen.
That's beautiful. How did you help yourself get there?
Well, that's a good question. I had to be my own coach, really. Like, I've never had a coach to speak of. I've had coaches as far as the publishing or things of that nature, a little bit here and there. Definitely with the tech stuff, virtual assistants help me with that. But as far as a mentor or anything like that, it was basically just me, and the mentors were my books. And so I just, I don't know. I have all the same ups and downs as everyone, and I could get in my my funks sometimes. But I knew the principles. I knew I had to just pick myself right back up. And it was never about money. Like, money was about money. So I used these principles to attract the money into my life that I needed. But the work of sharing the information has never been about the money. And so I just, in one sense, it was hard, but in another sense, it was really easy, because there's nothing else that I know of that I can do, or that I'm suited to, or that wouldn't destroy me, my soul, and my health, or something. Like, I wanted to. There's a chapter in my book on right livelihood, and I believe that there's something that each of us is born to do. And if we can find that and do it, and then somehow make our living from it, that's right livelihood. And when you really identify what you believe that is, then no matter how hard it is to get there, it's not really hard, because it's a labor of love. And you're going to get up the next morning, and you're going to have renewed energy. You're going to have that, even though every night, for weeks, you might go to bed beaten down because you only got 1% of what you wanted to do done, and 5 more obstacles have come up. But every morning is a whole new possibility. And so you start each day optimistic, and it's just a moment to moment process. But, probably my greatest asset was just that I learned how my mind works. I learned about mind power. I learned about the universal energy, and how to sync with that, so that I could get more of what I want, less of what I don't want, and avoid, danger and pitfalls, and attract synchronicities and miracles and things like that, and just kind of navigating through the process. My greatest challenges have invariably turned out to be my greatest lessons, and where I grew the most, and then was able to keep that increased power from there on out. So I don't see any of it as negative, although sometimes it seems like it when you're in it. But one of my books that's coming out very soon is on divine order, and I've come to find out and believe that everything is in divine order, and even the what we call, negative happenings and circumstances and all that, when we can look back on many of those and see that it was the best thing that could have happened at the time. And if we have clear enough vision, we'll be able to see that right now as it's happening, that even though we don't know what the great good that's going to come out of this is, we know that it's there.
Oh, isn't that true? When you've gone through the cycle enough times, I find myself saying that often. I'll be like, can we just fast forward to that point where I see it all? I know why this is all happening. Can we just go right there right now? Because it will come. It will come. Usually the transformation follows the pain. Yeah. Yeah. And I love what you said. I mean, everything that you just explained as to what helped contribute to your success, to your mindset, all came from you coaching yourself, which I find very powerful because there are a lot of amazing coaches out there. And there's a lot of amazing coaches that do cost money that perhaps might not be available to people who might be struggling financially. However, there are so many coaches out there with books that are in the library or with articles that are free online, and you can go out there and teach yourself. I love that, James. That's very powerful.
Right. And I want people to know that informational, those sources, videos, books, whatever they are, they're extremely invaluable. Like you can't really sit down and think this stuff up, right? And there's no reason to, because other people for hundreds and even thousands of years of human history have figured out a whole lot of things. So people, like me, I study something and live and breathe it for decades on end and then write a book about it. It's just so magical. You can spend a few dollars, buy a book, and get this huge wealth of information and insight that took somebody else decades to attain. It's magical. So the information and the educational materials are crucial to the process of success, I think.
Yeah, I agree. That's so, yes, very true. And you were talking about how situations, can be negative, but they turn into positive. We were just discussing that. Can you share with us a time that may have felt like a failure in the moment or a really big mistake in the moment, but something that you really learned and grew from?
Certainly. Well, I mean, one really big thing, I guess, is that we'll go back to when I was working on the book, and I had been working on it for about 8 years. And as a household, me and my life partner, we were $50,000 in credit card debt. And I was working a low-paying job as a caregiver for a developmentally disabled senior man in his home. So, like, I usually would ride my bicycle to work or whatever, across town. We had a car, of course. So, from a general picture, to be 38 years old with no real skills to speak of, and to be working a low-paying job that anybody could get who wants it if you don't have a criminal background, right? Doesn't require a lot of training or whatever, for just a little bit above minimum wage, and to be $50,000 in credit card debt with no prospects at the age of 38, that you could say this person is a failure, right? So if
had some struggles.
Right. Looking from the outside, he's had some struggles. He's down at the bottom right now, about as low as you can get, and he's got no prospects for going anywhere else. So this guy has failed. He's a failure. And so that was so here we are, $50,000 in credit card debt, and we're about to lose our credit cards now because, we're not only borrowing to make up for what I can't earn that we need to live, but we're also borrowing to pay the cards. And, credit card companies aren't stupid. They're monitoring your credit report and everything. And so we knew we're getting too close to the limits, and all of this. And I made a decision. I'd already been working on how to attract money using mind power for 8 years. I'd already used it to attract even six-figure windfalls. Amazing miracles, but it's very expensive to live, right? And we've moved around and stuff. And so here we are, 50,000 in credit card debt. And I did what anybody who heard what I did thought it was the craziest thing I could ever do. I quit my job.
Okay. Tell me more, because I can see why people would say this, but tell me more.
Right. Because on the surface, this looks bad. But I had a spiritual epiphany. I knew that if I was going to live this life of a self-help author that I had been dreaming of and talking about and whatever, that I needed to walk my walk, and I needed to use one of the main principles in my book, act as if. I need to act as if I already was what it was I wanted to be. I wanted to be a self-help author. In my mind, a self-help author stays home. His schedule is his own. He doesn't go anywhere when he doesn't want to, and he writes. And that's what I wanted to do. So I started to just to do that. I started to act as if I had the resources to be able to do that, but I didn't. I was close to homelessness and destroying my credit. But I just knew that if I was going to do it, I had to do it, and it was then. And people say, "Well, that took a lot of faith, or that was brave." And yes and no. When you have a spiritual epiphany, or something just comes from somewhere else, and you absolutely know that this is what you have to do, even though you don't know how it's going to work out, then there's almost like no other choice. I'm sure people go against that sometimes. They probably live to regret it, or they're always thinking, what if? But I absolutely have to do it. But here's the thing. Within 3 months of quitting my job, I was in this little attic. Well, it was actually quite big. It was almost the whole top of the house, but I was in this attic room. It had one window way down at one end. That was it. And an air conditioner in the ceiling. And I just, every day I worked on the book and I immersed myself in the material. I did everything I was, writing about, my affirmations, visualization, thinking as if, speaking as if, just everything, thinking end results. Typing away on my little brother word processor, teaching myself how to type. That's where I learned, up in that attic room. And within a 3-month period, I attracted 2 6-figure windfalls into the house. And before that had happened, I told my household and myself, I said, yes, we're X amount of dollars in credit card debt. And yes, we have no prospects for anything else to really, in life or anything else. But I said, I'm going to go out in faith, and I'm going to make a proclamation right now, just an absolution or whatever you want to call it, that none of us will ever have to leave our home again to go out into the world to do something for money that we wouldn't do for free. That's it. Quote unquote, work is now a 4-letter word, and we do what we love to do, and therefore it will never be work, and nothing else is acceptable. And we're not going to, we're just going to do that, and it's going to work out. And now I've published the book. That was 2006. I published the first book in 2007. It was many years before I wrote more books. It was even some more years before I started publishing the new books. But things have just magically happened all along the way. I basically claimed our freedom. I spoke it into the universe with an absolute faith that this can be done, and we will do it. And it happened. And I'm just convinced that without that faith and without that vision and without being willing to step out into the darkness, in other words, quitting my job, the only source of income, in complete faith, to just follow the inner urging and the inner drive to do the thing, write the book, I would still be, now I'm in my 60s, and I might still be working some low-paying job somewhere just trying to survive. If I didn't end up homeless and who knows what, 20, all those years ago.
Oh, there's so much I love in the story, James. I don't even know what to pick out. There's just too many little things. I love that you acted as if. I love that you had that internal knowing. Like you said, you said something along the lines of, I stepped into the darkness, which I can understand, because when there is that uncertainty, it does feel like you're stepping into darkness. But as you were talking to me, it felt like you were stepping into your knowing, if you will. And it was something that you knew deep down. I call it the tuning fork. When you feel that tuning fork vibrate inside you, that knowing that something is right, even though you can't say quite why it is, but deep down, you just know it is. And you're right. There are people who don't follow that, and I'm sure they do regret it. I think it's important to pay attention to those feelings and follow them. And look where it got you. I think that's wonderful.
And you just have to really hold on to that knowing, because your conscious mind will try to come in. It will try to, you know, with all these fearful thoughts and what ifs and this is crazy, you know, call and beg for your job back. I mean, these little thoughts creep in, but it's like, no, you have no power here. I've got a different agenda, and these thoughts are no part of that. And then you just, you know, you turn your mind to something else. Really, you don't fight or wrestle with the fears and doubts. You just turn your mind to their opposites. Is what I do.
So what advice would you give someone who's in the second half of life, 40, 50, 60s, what have you, might be struggling either to find the next right opportunity or struggling just in some aspect of life with money or relationships? Is there any best advice that you'd give someone?
Well, at these more, you know, these older advanced ages or whatever you want to call it, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, I think really I would say stop thinking about how much older you are than you used to be. That's okay, because people think, oh, if I would have just, I mean, I've even done it. Oh, if I would have done this when started learning this when I was 20, you know, but now I'm 35, it's too late, you know, kind of a thing. So stop thinking about how much older you are than you used to be and start thinking more about how much younger you are than you're going to be.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Okay, because there's a lot of years ahead. And so think of yourself in the future, looking back to you now, and are you going to be happy? You look back to your 60 something self, let's say you're 60 years old and you're 80 years old now, and you're looking back at your 60-year-old self, and are you going to be happy and satisfied with the efforts that your 60-year-old self, or, you know, 30, you know, looking back from 50 to 30 or whatever, are you going to be happy with the efforts you're making right now when you look back in 20 years and see what you did for that version of you that will be in the future? And with those kinds of thoughts in mind, I think it just gives us a lot of perspective and strength, you know. And people think they're old. I mean, you know, I've got a neighbor, a couple neighbors close by. They're like a year or two from 100. And they're still walking around, and my father's still alive, and he's got a neighbor that they're very close to 100. They still drive and do you know, volunteer work and stuff. Well, people, they're old at 30, and then they feel like they're old at 40. Well, you're not old. You're not old until you're dead. There's no such thing as old. There's always more. There's always more life, even if it's another year. What can you accomplish in that year so that when you close your eyes for that final time, you're not going to say, you know, what if, or I wish I would have.
You just gave me my new favorite line. You're not old till you're dead, period.
There you go. I never said that before. That's a pretty good one, I think.
Yeah, it is. I like it. So, you know, you talked a lot about mindset, and right now we are going through a very difficult economic circumstances all around. This is worldwide here. So I'm sure people might be wondering, you know, can you use mind power to help attract money during these bad economic times as well as good times? Any advice that you give to people right now with that?
Yes. Well, I would say, you know, obviously, from my perspective, first of all, yes, everything, mind power to attract money using the metaphysical techniques for that specific purpose, they do work in bad economic times, which we are in, and which are nowhere near over. Most people don't, I think most people underestimate how bad this is, but it's going to shake out, and we're going to see it's going to get, it's a lot worse than we think. And I'm not being negative, I'm being practical, because, you know, we can't really function well in a scenario which we don't understand or discount. We have to understand what the situation is. Fortunes are lost in times such as these, but fortunes are also made in times such as these. And then the case I would make for mind power in particular is that, you know, the old saying is a rising tide lifts all boats. So when times are good and you know, jobs are plentiful and everything's going good, it's not, you don't even have to understand mind power. You invariably are pulled into it. You have a positive attitude. Other people are keeping you up, and you're seeing, everybody's using mind power, whether they know it or not, but you don't really have to know that it's mind power or how to use it. Whereby now, when times are tough and the receding tide is bringing all of the boats lower with it. Now is the time where can be the difference between life and death, sustenance and lack, a home and homelessness. Now this can actually be the life-saving missing key if you don't already have it. And that's the great power of the human mind to not only affect the actions and habits of the individual, but to go out from the individual into the world at large and have an effect on people and events and circumstances. That's the great power of mind power. And we need to understand that we have it, learn some techniques. It's not all that hard to understand. It's not all that hard to do. But now, in times like these, not only does it work, but most people need it, or at least could make use of it more than any other time in their life.
Oh, I can hear you. It's very true. The power of the mind is incalculable. If you ask me, it's I've seen the power of the mind work out in amazing ways throughout my life. And a lot of times you don't realize how that's working in your negative aspect or positive aspect. Like you said, if it's positive economic times, you're just naturally that way. Right now, people are likely trending towards negative thought processes if they're not aware and thinking about it. So I would love to hear maybe some advice on changing those mindsets in a couple of different ways. So in one way, you have a lot of people who are looking for work right now, and there isn't as much work as we know as the amount of people looking. And as you mentioned, it might not be getting better quite anytime soonish. So what advice could you give someone about making sure they have enough money to meet their needs right now? Any advice to help them find their next position if they're looking for one right now? Is there anything that you can add to that?
Okay, certainly. One thing I would go back to is the fact that they need to start from a foundation of understanding the nature of their current predicament, and by by default, that also involves not only their personal circumstances but the circumstances of the world, really. Certainly their particular business or sector, whatever they're working in, but wider than that, their state, their country, and the world. We need to understand the basis of the basic reality of what we are experiencing and what we are likely to experience. And one thing I tell people is that if you're getting your news, quote unquote, from the mainstream media only, and a lot of people do, then you are at worst sorely underinformed, and at best, and at worst, you're totally misinformed. So seek outside, whether it's information about your own business or industry or just the economy. You really need to understand what is going on, and then start using now that you know where you're starting from, and assess your own self, your strengths, obviously, and all of that. Is there anything new you need to learn or whatever? Any coach or whatever would tell you that. But start to really see yourself and feel yourself in the type of circumstances that you want to be in the position you want to be in, or whatever. But something also that is very important is that most of the money that's come to me through mind power has not come through my work. It has come through ways that I never could have thought of. So yes, envision yourself and speak as if, and the different techniques from my book to move towards position that you would want or whatever. But it's a big mistake to think that I need that to get money. That's how I will get my money to survive. Keep the two separate. Always understand that with mind power, you can attract money directly. It doesn't have to come through something you can point at and say, oh, I bought 1,000 widgets for $10 and sold them for $50. Sometimes it just comes in amazing ways that you never really could have thought of. So use the different, think as if, speak as if, act as if, certainly, visualization, affirmations, learn the techniques. Again, they're easy to understand, easy to use, easy to apply. But don't think that your money has to come from your job. The job you're using your mind power to move toward is only one way the money can come to you. I mean, you could buy a lottery ticket today and have hundreds of millions of dollars next week. Literally. I mean, money can come to you in that way or in a multitude of ways, and always keep that in mind. The money does not have to come to the job through the job. The job is one way that at least some of the money can come to you. So get your perspective more in line with that reality.
Good advice. You're right. So many of us do have the very narrow perspective of that's where money comes from, and forget to realize how abundant the world really is all around us. That's really great. On that same vein, is there anything else that you would add that would be along the lines of just attracting money and success in life in general?
Certainly. Well, I'll just open up to the table of contents, right, of how to attract using mind power. Chapter 1 is on desire. So you need to have a strong enough desire for what it is you want. Chapter 2 is on belief. You need to start developing the belief that you can have it. Chapter 3 is on expectancy. So you need to start to have that belief become so strong that it actually transforms into expectancy, where you absolutely expect these things to happen. Not that you're hoping for them or you believe they can happen, but now you expect them to happen. Chapter 4 is on money mindset. And to give you the short version of that, people should always strive to have all of their thoughts that have to do with money in any way, shape, or form to be positive. And if not, at least neutral, and avoid at all costs thinking about money in any terms that are negative. That's your money, the other people's money, your neighbor, how the government spends money. Your money mindset is made up of all your thoughts and feelings having to do with money. And no matter what those are and what you're thinking about, it affects your personal finances. Then there's money goals. Think end results. Always be thinking about what you want, not about what you don't want. Think as if you already have it. You think and thus you feel as if you do have it. Speak as if is a really big one. People are speaking themselves into poverty. Oh, times are tough. Oh, I don't have the right education for that. Oh, I don't think I'll get that promotion. So you always want to speak as if the financial circumstances you want to come about either are now or will be reality. Act as if we talked about affirmations most people know about. They're very powerful. They're so simple, but they're so powerful. I once got out of $10,000 in credit card debt in a 4 to 6 week period with one simple affirmation.
What was that affirmation? That's amazing.
That affirmation is all of our credit cards are completely paid off. And at the end of that, and this was decades ago, and 10,000 just might as well have been 10 million. Somebody wrote us a check, gave us a gift of $10,000. After 4 to 6 weeks of me using that affirmation, we actually received a gift for $10,000. Right, and then every credit card bill that came in, it was paid off in full, and we were out of that debt in no time. Visualization, of course, that's a staple metaphysical technique. Yep. A lot of things many people don't think of as environment. Our environment is a reflection of us, and we have created and attracted it. Our environment affects us, but what we think and feel, we also affect our environment, so it becomes a closed loop. Now, through the way we use our minds, the environment, we attract gels around us. And so people can see, okay, I can see there's a connection between that, how I'm thinking and feeling, and what I'm seeing around me in my home and workplace and my locker at school, whatever it is. But it works the other way too. We can make changes to our environment, make it more streamlined, more conducive to, procedure and getting things done. And so we can affect and improve our environment to make it more in keeping with being proficient mind power practitioners and being successful in life in general. And we can also clean up our environment, straighten it out. And as we do that, we're actually organizing our mind. So it's kind of like a closed loop. Organization is another big one, to organize your environment, but also your affairs and your calendar, because mind power is all about organization, prioritization, and understanding what's important, cutting out what's not. I have in chapter 14, I have 5 laws of money that I've identified. And 15 is intuition. 16 is on planning. 17, right livelihood. 18 is self-image. A lot of people miss that. You can attract a lot of money with mind power, but unless you develop the self-image of a person who's capable of doing it, first of all, but second of all, deserving of having it, you'll keep undermining yourself, sabotaging yourself. 19, right. And then chapter 19 is on personal energy, which is huge because we only have so much energy when we wake up in the morning. So the more we can learn how to have, some of that has to do with physical health and whatnot. And the more we, proficiently and in a focused way we can use it, the better results we'll get. And then in chapter 20 is called Radiate Financial Increase. And that is sharing this energy and this consciousness with all of those we can, lifting as many people as we can along with us. So it's any one of these techniques. I will just take speak as if. If all a person starts doing is always speaking as if the financial circumstances they want to be either are now or will be reality, they will absolutely transform their lives with any one of these techniques. But once you start stacking them, that's when the real magic and the real power starts. You become an unstoppable mind power point of focus for the universe to attract the types of things that you decide you want to see in your life and in the world.
Oh, you're so right. You just covered. I read a lot of books, James. I read over 60 books a year, and I can say, and I love self-help books. I can say that you definitely covered everything that is incredibly important in a mindset. I'm actually very curious about your book, and I will be getting it myself. So I'm looking forward to checking it out.
Quickly, that since you brought that up, and by the way, I did send you a PDF copy with my original email. But I want people to know that virtually all of my books right now, I understand times are tough and I'm doing my part. Virtually all of my books in digital format, like on Kindle, on Amazon, it would be Kindle, whatever, are free.
Oh, fantastic, James. That is wonderful.
That's Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo. Just go there, search my name, and you've got I have 11 books right now. 10 of them are free out there, wherever you find your books. And then one of them is Attract Money Forever. It has a small price, but if you just go to my website and sign up for my free monthly Mind Power and Money e-zine, then you also get that book for PDF for free. So basically, all of my books are free in digital format, and my new books are also going to be free. I got a couple coming out real soon here, and then a couple more right behind those.
What a gift. That is wonderful because you know what? It is a difficult time right now. And everything you said, every chapter that you just mentioned, which, as you said, is a mindset technique, can absolutely change your life if you just apply it, learn about it and apply it. So that is a gift that you're giving the world. I think that I salute you for that. Thank you. So I will make sure that link is in this show notes as well for anyone who wants that. So, James, I can't thank you enough for your time. I loved everything you had to say. It was such important messages up and down the line. Before we go, are there any final thoughts or any last bits of advice that we didn't cover or I didn't ask about?
Well, we probably said what people need to hear. I'll just remind them. We didn't put it in exactly these words, maybe, but your thoughts as an individual human being, your thoughts will make you or break you. Really get that. That's where it starts, right between your ears. If you think right, then you will be right. And if you be right, then everything else will be right. And so, but there's four basic things. Now, we're talking about mind power. Mind power can transform your life. There's four basic ways to harness the power of mind power. That's what your thoughts, your feelings, the images you hold in your mind, and the words you speak. Just those four things. It's not hard. If you get a hold of those four things, you will absolutely transform your life. You'll be a blessing to everyone around you, and life will be completely different and probably and better than you've ever thought it could be.
Oh, I completely agree. James, I used that advice for myself shortly, a year or two ago, and it definitely transformed my life, transformed my mindset, transformed the way I look at everything. And life is a beautiful, beautiful thing. So, thank you for all of your advice and all of your words of wisdom that you shared with us today.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me. This has been a very wonderful, exhilarating process with you.
I so loved James' story. You guys, this is someone who was working close to minimum wage jobs, feeling like he was drowning in credit card debt, trying to make ends meet so that he doesn't lose his home. How many people out there are feeling this way right now? So many. And there are so many reasons why people are feeling this way. What I love is that James did not allow himself to continue to stay stuck in that feeling. He went out and found the tools to help him get to a better place. He started learning, started teaching himself, and he read and read and read. He fed his mind with the right information until he knew he wanted to share what he had learned with the world. James decided he was going to write a book. He didn't have anyone telling him that he should write a book. No one was saying, "Oh, James, what a great writer you are. Why aren't you writing a book?" He didn't have a book deal waiting to pay him big gobs of money. No, he just knew he needed to write this book. He knew this was something his soul wanted to create. He had found his why. And when he really found that, when he had his epiphany, he didn't worry about anything else, and he decided to jump in and make his dream happen. Literally. Everything he learned about reaching goals had taught him to think as if, speak as if, act as if. He realized if he was going to write about this mindset methodology, he had to live it completely. He quit his job, taking a huge risk to really embody his beliefs and practices and act as if he was a successful author. He wrote down his title. He wrote down his working ideas. And then, this is my favorite part, he taught himself how to use a computer. He taught himself how to use a computer. He taught himself how to type. He taught himself grammar, all by reading. How many people would have stopped and not moved a step forward because they didn't know how to use a computer? How many people have gotten frustrated with the typing or writing, telling themselves their grammar wasn't good enough, they're just not a good enough writer, and just given up? James had a huge learning curve. He had to teach himself everything from scratch. He had no mentor. He had no teacher, yet he let nothing stop him. He taught himself everything he needed to know by reading. How amazing! How inspirational! James' story shows us there are no excuses. You have the power to learn and accomplish anything you put your mind to. We have an overabundance of free information via the library. There are free books and free internet access, allowing you to grow your mind in any way possible. It took James 9 years from start to finish on his first book. He lived his life in between with many ups and downs, but he figured out the process along the way. After that first book, he has written 10 others, with many being written in the matter of days. Learning and starting something new is hard. There are many struggles during those early stages of growth and creation, but once you figure it all out, moving forward only gets easier and easier as you go along. If you're in those beginning stages, remind yourself to be patient. Keep your focus on how far you've come in your growth, as opposed to worrying about how much farther you need to go. We tend to beat ourselves up when we haven't reached our goals quick enough, when really what we should be focusing on is where we were when we started and where we are now. Keep your focus on the growth. James' greatest success is that he's living the life of his dreams. He knew what he wanted, and he aligned himself with his true purpose. He developed his personal vision that came from his deep knowing of what he wanted. And even though he didn't know how he was going to get there, he kept taking steps in the right direction each day until it happened. He chose to follow a labor of love. And because of that, he gets up every morning with renewed energy, excited about the possibility of each day. For him, there is no such thing as work. And he admits this is a moment-to-moment process. It's a practice that you bring awareness to and you work on consistently. What is your labor of love? If you're not sure, think on it. Ask yourself, what special gift do I bring to the table? What brings you joy inside? What stirs your soul? What did you love to do when you were between the ages of 7 and 14? Often, what we love the most during those years can point us in our true direction. James shares that his greatest challenges became his greatest teachers. These were the times when he grew the most and where he increased his own personal power. Every time he had a negative occurrence, as time went on, he found that whatever it was, it ended up being one of the best things that could have happened to him. He learned there's no such thing as good or bad things, for we do not know what door that situation could open next. The purpose of pain is transformation, not deliverance. James learned to use those challenging situations to learn, to grow, and to become. James also gives wise advice around dealing with your conscious mind when going after your goals. Our minds are engineered to go negative, so we must be aware of our thoughts and stay in that driver's seat, dictating the direction of our brain. You must train your brain towards the positive. When the mind goes fearful or negative, derailing you from your goals by telling you you're not good enough, or you're not smart enough, or you'll fail, that thing you're scared of will happen, James suggests very simply to not give them power. Don't fight with it or wrestle with it. Don't try to get rid of the fears or doubts. Don't get upset about having those thoughts. Just simply be aware that they're happening and then turn your mind directly to the opposite. If you're picturing yourself failing, replace that picture with the absolute best case scenario happening. Worried that someone will say you're crazy or ridiculous, picture people telling you how much they admire and respect you. Picture people thanking you for bringing your gift to the world. Stay aware of your thoughts, and then replace your negative thoughts with positive ones. Visualize the positive in detail and feel that outcome come alive inside of you. After all, if two outcomes can equally be true, you owe it to yourself to imagine the very best possible one. I'll leave you with two final thoughts from our talk with James. First, and this is so very important to remember, you are not old until you're dead. Full stop. There is no such thing as old. There is always more you can accomplish, so you're never left feeling what if or wish I had. Stop thinking about how much older you are now than you used to be. Instead, think about how much younger you are now than you're going to be. Think of yourself in the future, looking back at yourself now. Will your 80-year-old self feel good about the effort you put forth with your 60-year-old self, your 70-year-old self with your 50-year-old self, and so on? Think about all that can be accomplished in the upcoming years. What kind of positive changes can you make now that will have an impact on your future self? These are the questions you want to ask yourself. Questions that empower, that give you perspective and strength. Finally, James shared some of his key takeaways from his book to develop the right mindset for abundance. Side note, remember that James is currently offering his books for free for download. Incredibly generous of him. Take a look at the show notes for links on where to download his books. But James did give us a very nice outline for some of the simple key changes you can make to your mindset that will have a massive impact on your life. First comes the desire. Then you must believe that you can have it, that you deserve it. Then you must expect that it will happen. Believe it so strong that you absolutely know in your bones you will have the outcome you want. Keep your thoughts around money positive. Think end results with your goals, keeping your focus on what you want rather than what you don't want. And then think of your goals as if they are reality. Speak as if your goals are reality. And act as if your goals are reality. Our brains are supercomputers, and we decide the code it follows. Your brain is always listening to your thoughts and your words. This is much more powerful than you realize. Your thoughts will make or break you. Everything begins with what is happening between your two ears. You can take the controls and lead your brain to where you want it to go. If you think right, you will be right. Harness the power of your mind. Choose your visions. Then change your thoughts, change your words, change your actions, change your life. Also, you're not old until you're dead. Until next time. Thank you for spending time with us on Fresh Blood. If you love this episode, please consider subscribing, rating, or giving us a review. I'm looking forward to connecting with you again on the next episode.